Hi, my name is Garrett Kelly. I'm the principal at SeaChangeNet, which is a foundation that was in charge of stakeholder engagement in the EU Calc project. People often ask what's the important component of having stakeholder engagement for EU Calc, and it's so core to the project that it couldn't be overemphasized. From the beginning of the project, from co-design, we were asking technical specialists to help us. All the way through the process, we were talking to different stakeholder groups. And all through the process, we're listening to people, and it's become a fundamental part of the co-design process, the opinions and the thoughts that we got from over 1,000 people that we interacted with in the last 2 years. People often ask, why do you spend so much time on effort engaging with stakeholders? The EU Calc is basically a model. It's about numbers. It produces answers based on the numbers that you put in. But a fundamental issue in it is the challenge for us in Europe is to get to net zero. And the model has shown us that you can't get there by just technical solutions or just by people changing their behavior. You know, it's not enough if we eat less meat or walk more. We still need to stop using coal. We still need to make our houses much more efficient. We have huge challenges in the industry sector. And many of the stakeholders came to us with suggestions that pushed our ambition level. And I think one of the wonderful things about this model is that it shows you what will happen. It doesn't show you just how much carbon there will be less in the atmosphere. It shows you how many jobs will be created or lost. It shows you what will happen to air quality. It's got many components to it which tell ordinary people important stories about the benefits of a carbon neutral future. One of the stakeholder groups that we engaged with, of course, apart from the Commission officials, was the European parliamentarians. And it's interesting, when you talk to a parliamentarian, they come from a political group, they come from a certain country, they know who their electorate was, they know who elected them. And you talk to them about tons of carbon this, tons of carbon that, reducing this, reducing that, and they say, yeah, but this is a really complex story to tell to a person who is my average voter. I want to know things about, what can you tell me about positives for them? And one of the things, for example, that they were very excited about was the more energy efficiency we do, the warmer and comfortable people's homes become, the less energy poverty they will be. If we do deep retrofit of many, many homes across Europe, it will create many jobs. It will cause your heating bill to be less, and it will mean you live in a more comfortable environment for less energy. This was a very positive message for them. Of course, pollution has become the bête noire of all kinds of discussions globally, and one of the things that parliamentarians pushed very hard to have in the model was indications of the number of lives lost due to pollution. And the more you go into a net zero future, the nearer you get to that, the very, very many lives you save. An interesting thing about the model is, and this is in terms of challenges we face, it's agnostic. Whatever industry we talk to and whatever values they gave us, as long as they could be documented, we put them into the model. The model doesn't care what choices you make, it just shows you what the impact of that will be. And this is the important thing, because it will show you the cost of decisions you make. It will show you whether it will be good for people's health in terms of the amount of exercise they do, because diet has a big impact not just on carbon emissions but on our health. And it will show you other things that will happen in the industry sector. So the model's agnostic. The choices that you make determine the outcomes and the consequences. You ask me, what are the messages? Well, my first message is everyone should go play with the model. It's a very friendly interface, and you know, even with a little bit of practice, you're going to learn some very interesting things about the country you live in and what its future could be. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing is, God is in the detail, as they say. And all of these challenges have enormous numbers of very interesting little tweaks and twerks in them, which would allow us to get to a net carbon future. And in some cases, there's choices to be made. Are you going to fly less? Are you going to eat less meat? Are you going to live in a slightly smaller apartment and wear a jumper when it gets cold instead of walking around in a t-shirt when it's -5 outside? All of these things have impact. And if, 200 million people in Europe decide they want to live in an apartment that's heated to 21 degrees in the middle of winter, that's going to cost an awful amount of energy. And these are the kind of things that the model will allow you to think about. The choices you can make as a human being, the choices that we can make as Europeans, and that for me is one of the fundamental things about the model. I can tell you from the work that we've done in Southeast Europe on the model that we finished, it was almost exactly the same price to get to a European standard on carbon in Southeast Europe as it was to keep going with 70% coal. We took all of the projects and all of the building projections for staying on the old pathway, as we called it, the road to nowhere. And we said the road to nowhere costs up to 2050 almost exactly the same price. And you know, every model is wrong, all cost projections always turn out to be wrong. But when you look at the numbers, the prices of all the technologies are going down, the savings are enormous, and this leads me to believe that, not being an economist, we're going to find that the offset of benefits is going to be as positive as the costs will be in terms of investment. The one thing I will say about change is it requires a large upfront effort in capital. You do need to make capital cheap to do these things, yes? But, you know, the last time that Europeans have used capital in such an intensive way to change something was when they were going to war. And I ask myself, why is it that we find it so easy to spend such huge amounts of money and change our entire system in order to try and kill another bunch of people, and we somehow think it's a problem that we should do that when we want to save our planet? What do I think is the greatest challenge? I think the greatest challenge is not that we don't have the information. I don't think the challenge is the technology. I even don't think that seeing the rise of vegetarianism, that it's such a great problem for people to deal with. And the food industry is responding by making all kinds of vegetarian type, meat type products, yes? The problem is, will we have enough political will quickly enough to avoid the worst impacts by 2050? And they used to say there are climate deniers and climate acceptors. Now they say there are climate delayers. So there are people who say, yes, I accept climate change, I accept that I'm impacting it, but for some reason, which I rationalize to myself, I'm not the first mover. I'm not going to be the person who does this now. I'm going to be the person who's going to wait and see how others do it. And I think inside the European Union, not only do those climate delayers need to be brought on board, and the model is very convincing about that, but European Union needs to become a role model for other parts of the world as well. I think that's a very important thing. And that's my main concern. It's the human beings and our political will, nothing to do with the technology or the solutions.